Nadia had always known things slightly before they happened. She knew when the rains would come 3 days early. She knew when Elder Marin's knee would act up before he even reached for his walking stick. She knew, 6 days before the Great Hall ceremony, that Caius was going to say someone else's name. So she brought bread. It was a small piece, wrapped in cloth and tucked into the pocket of her gray dress, the dress she had pressed carefully the night before, because whatever was going to happen, she was going to look clean while it happened. She stood in the third row with the other unmated Omegas, and she held the bread in her pocket, and she waited. The Great Hall was full, 1,000 people, maybe more, candles everywhere, the kind of evening that was made to be remembered. Caius walked in, and the room went still, the way rooms always went still for him. He was tall. He carried himself like a man who had never once in his life been uncertain of where he was standing. His wolf was old and powerful, and everyone in the room could feel it, that low hum of something enormous held very carefully in check. Nadia felt it too. She ate a small piece of her bread. He spoke for a while about the pack, about prosperity, about the future. His voice was the kind of voice that filled a room without effort, the way weather fills a valley. People leaned forward. People held their breath. Then he said, Seraphine. Seraphine of the Silver Ridge Pack, his chosen Luna, his future queen. A woman stepped forward from the left side of the hall, tall and composed, with dark hair pinned at the back of her neck. She was beautiful in the way that made other women straighten their posture without realizing it. She moved to stand beside Caius, and he looked at her with the particular expression of a man who has made a decision and is at peace with it. The hall erupted. Applause. A few happy cries. Someone near Nadia whispered, "She's stunning," to no one in particular. Nadia finished her bread. She folded the cloth back into her pocket. She clapped twice, because it would have been strange not to. Then she turned and walked out of the hall at a normal pace, and no one noticed her leave, because no one had noticed her arrive. The formal rejection came 4 days later. A council aide knocked on her door in the morning and handed her a folded paper with the royal seal on it. She read it over her tea. It was politely worded. It said she was summoned to the East Wing at midday. It did not say why, but she already knew why. She wore the same gray dress. There were 4 council members in the room when she arrived, and a scribe at a small table in the corner, and Caius standing at the window with his hands behind his back. He turned when she entered. He had clearly prepared what he wanted to say. She could tell by the way he took a breath before beginning, the careful pause of a man who has rehearsed something difficult and wants to deliver it with dignity. He said that the mate bond between them, which had never been formally announced, would be severed by mutual agreement. He said that he hoped she understood. He said that he wished her well, and that the pack would provide her with a settlement. He said it cleanly. The words were not unkind. That was somehow the worst part. Nadia looked at him for a moment. "Good to know," she said. He blinked. She walked to the scribe's table and signed her name on the document that was waiting for her. Her handwriting was neat and even. She handed the pen back. She nodded once at the council members, who were all staring at her, with expressions she didn't bother to read. Then she left. 3 steps down the corridor, her wolf went silent. Not grieving, not howling, just gone quiet. Like a candle going out in a room you had forgotten was lit. Nadia kept walking. She did not slow down. She did not stop until she reached the back gardens, where she sat on the stone bench near the fountain for exactly 11 minutes, watching the water move, and then she stood up and went inside to begin packing. She had already been packing for a week. She left before sunrise on the second morning, with 1 bag, good boots, and the particular kind of money that does not come without cost. The road out of the territory was long and mostly uphill for the first hour. The sky was pale gray in the east, and the air was cold and clean. She did not look back. The eastern neutral territories were 8 days of travel from the packlands. She arrived on a morning when it was raining lightly, which she had also known ahead of time and had brought a suitable jacket for. The city of Eral was small and practical, and full of people who had come from somewhere else and had chosen not to explain themselves, which suited Nadia perfectly. She found a room, then she found work. Then, after a year, she found a small house with 2 windows and a patch of garden behind it that the previous tenant had started and then apparently given up on. Nadia did not give up on it. She became a healer. She was good at it, perhaps because she was the kind of person who noticed things. The slight tension in a jaw that meant the pain was worse than reported. The way a person breathed differently when they were frightened rather than sick. Her neighbors trusted her. Her patience came back. She built a quiet life, steadily, the way you build a wall, one stone at a time, without ceremony. Her wolf stayed quiet, not gone, just waiting. Nadia didn't ask what it was waiting for. 3 years passed, the way years pass, when you are busy and working, and not thinking too hard about the past. One day she looked up from her herb garden and realized she hadn't thought about Caius in almost 4 months, and she felt something close to satisfaction about that, which she noted and then returned to her weeding. The howling started in the middle of a war council. Caius was standing at the head of a long table. Seraphine was to his left, speaking clearly about the northern border dispute. The map on the table was detailed and well drawn. Everything was in order. His wolf howled. Not at anything in the room. Not at any of the generals or the map or the problem at hand. It howled east, with the urgent, pulling feeling of something calling out toward something it had lost and only just remembered. Caius kept his face still. He had spent years learning to keep his face still. He dismissed the council on a pretext. He stood alone in the war room for a long time. His wolf kept pulling east, low and steady, like a current under water. He stood there until the pulling was unbearable, and then he went back to Seraphine's chambers, and he stayed there until morning. The howling did not stop. It did not stop the next morning, or the morning after that, or the morning after that. It ran underneath every meeting, every decision, every conversation, a constant sound just below hearing that only he could feel. He began to lose sleep. He began to make small errors in judgment that his advisors noted and did not comment on, which meant they had already discussed it among themselves and decided not to bring it to him directly, which was its own kind of problem. 2 months after the howling began, he called for his fastest horse and a diplomatic mission to the eastern neutral territories, and an aide who was good at making things look official. He believed it was about trade routes for approximately 4 hours into the journey. Nadia heard about the Alpha King's delegation from her neighbor Osta, who heard everything from everyone and shared it freely and without being asked. Nadia was outside with her herb garden when Osta appeared at the fence. "There's a royal delegation from the Western Pact territories," Osta said. "Arrived last night, staying at the Eastern Inn." "Good to know," Nadia said. She finished what she was doing with the rosemary and then went inside and locked the door and made tea. The tea grew cold. She made it again. She stood at the window and looked at her 2 windows from the inside, which did not help, and then sat down and looked at the wall for a while. He knocked the following afternoon. She was in the middle of measuring dried herbs when the knock came. 3 careful knocks, not too loud, the knock of someone who was not certain of his welcome and was trying to be respectful about it. She knew who it was before she crossed to the door. She stood with her hand near the latch and did not open it. She listened to herself breathe. She listened to the silence on the other side of the door. After a long time, she heard him leave. She stood there for another 2 minutes anyway, and then she went back to her herbs, and she measured everything wrong 3 times in a row and had to start over. Aft, he came back the following morning in the rain. He had, apparently, no flowers and no letter and no prepared speech, just himself, standing on her step in the rain, with water on his shoulders, and an expression she had never seen on him before, something without armor in it. She heard the rain and opened the door and looked at him. He looked back. "You're getting my step wet," she said. Something moved in his expression, not quite a smile, something smaller and more genuine than a smile. She stepped back and let him in. She gave him a towel. She did not look at him while she gave him the towel. She put the kettle on because she didn't know what else to do with her hands, and she stood at the far end of her small kitchen with her back to him, while the water heated. He started talking. He talked for a long time, actually, which surprised her because she had always thought of him as a man of few words. He talked about the howling. He talked about the months of silence before the howling, which he had taken for peace, and which he understood now had not been peace at all. He talked about Seraphine, carefully, respectfully, without blame in either direction, and he said that Seraphine was a woman who deserved a man whose wolf was not constantly looking east, and that she had said so herself, in a clean office, and given him back his grandmother's ring, which was the most dignity anyone had ever shown him. He stopped talking. Nadia poured the tea. She set a cup in front of him. She sat down across the small table and wrapped her hands around her own cup and looked at the steam coming off it. Her wolf, which had been quiet for 3 years, made a single sound, low, like an answer to a question that had been asked somewhere far away, a long time ago. Nadia stood up. "I'll be in the garden," she said. She went out the back door and stood among her herbs in the cold air. Some of them were doing very well. The mint had completely taken over the left side, which was its own kind of problem. The lavender was mostly alive. She looked at all of it, and breathed slowly, and let herself feel, just for those few minutes, with no one watching, the weight of the last 3 years, and the strange, unreasonable feeling that was trying to come up through it like a plant through stone. Inside, Caius counted the minutes. He did not know why he counted. He told himself it was a habit of command, a way of tracking time. His wolf, which had been howling for 2 months straight, went still and quiet the moment Nadia had stepped out the back door, and it waited there, patient, in a way he had never once in his life managed to be. 11 minutes later she came back inside. She sat down again. She picked up her tea. She looked at him. He said nothing. She appreciated that. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want to ask you to come back," he said, "but not to the territory." She raised an eyebrow. "I'll come here," he said, "or wherever you are. I'm not asking you to give up what you've built. I'm asking if you'd let me build something alongside it." Nadia looked at him for a long time. He was still the same man, tall, certain of where he was standing. His wolf pressed quietly against the edge of him, patient and enormous, watching her with both of their eyes. She thought about the bread she had brought to the ceremony. She thought about the 3 years of quiet and work and slow, deliberate building. She thought about the 3 years of quiet and work and slow, deliberate building. She thought about the 3 years of quiet and work and slow, deliberate building. She thought about the herb garden, which was mostly alive, and the 2 windows, and the neighbor who asked too many questions, and the life she had made from the kind of money you only get once and spend carefully. It was a good life. It was hers. "You hurt me," she said. It was not a dramatic thing, she said. It was just a true thing, stated plainly, the way she would state any true thing. "Yes," he said. He did not try to explain it away. "And you can't make it not have happened." "No. And things like this are never simple." "No," he said again. "I don't imagine they are." She looked at her garden through the back window. The mint had really gotten entirely out of hand. She was going to have to do something about that. She was going to have to dig up half of it and put something stronger in its place, and then wait and see what grew. She looked back at him. She did not say yes, and she did not say no. She was not a woman who made decisions she hadn't thought about carefully, and she had not thought about this carefully, because she had not, until 48 hours ago, thought it was something that was going to require a decision. "Drink that," she said. "It cost me something." He took the cup with both hands. He drank. Outside, her wolf lifted its head and made a sound it had not made in 3 years. Something long and low and wide open, aimed at nothing in particular, or maybe at everything. Nadia kept her face very still and looked out the window at her mostly alive garden, and she let the sound move through her, and she didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She had always known things slightly before they happened. She was beginning to know this one too.